So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar today. It is London Climate Action Week, if you hadn't already noticed. And today we will be talking to a really enthusiastic panel, and we're going to be talking about beyond profit. How can the economy evolve to support people and planet? My name's Lisa Ashford, and I am CEO of Ethex, the direct impact investment platform. I'll be your chair today, and if I could just quickly run through who is joining us today. We have Erinch Sahan, who is Business and Enterprise Lead at Doughnut Economics Action Lab. And if you've seen this webinar advertised, you'll have seen the donuts flying around. So Erinch is going to be providing the donuts today. So following that, Mary Stevens, Experiments and Program Manager at Friends of the Earth. Welcome, Mary. Great to see you. Emma Newman, who is author, podcaster, and Money Movers Ambassador, and we'll be hearing more about what that is later in the session today. And Thami Schweichler, founder and CEO of United Repair Centre, an excellent example of circular economy in action and how that contributes to a donut economy. We'll be talking about that a bit later.
I'm here to talk about donuts and the donut, and this is the one donut that is actually good for you. It's the one donut that it's good that it's sticky, and hopefully it sticks in people's mind. But essentially, I'm going to switch into my background here. Essentially, the donut tells us that we have two fundamental boundaries that we must not transgress. We must build an economy within these two boundaries. On the outside are the 9 planetary boundaries that Earth system scientists have told us we must not transgress. We must stay within these boundaries. Of course, climate change is one of but not just climate change. It's the way we treat our soils, our air, our biodiversity, whole range of ecological factors that are in a fine balance that allow us to thrive on this phenomenally life-inducive planet that we happen to occupy. And on the inside, there's an additional boundary, because not only do we need to stay short of those ecological planetary boundaries, but we also need to make sure we are providing the essentials of life. So we cannot fall short on the essentials of life, which are the social foundations, that inner green concentric circle you see just above my shoulder right there. So essentially, that is the safe and just space for humanity, where we are neither overshooting the planetary boundary nor falling short on life's essentials. It's a place of balance. It's a place where we need to redefine and redesign our economies, our institutions, finance, business, broader economic institutions that shape the reality of what kind of economic outcomes we achieve. And it means we need to move away from some of the 20th century features of the design of our economy and our business world, which is around being degenerative and driving linear models that create waste and drive waste, models that create huge inequality and divisive economies, and ones that are obsessed with growth at all costs. Now, how are we doing? And this is the final bit I just want to quickly show above my left shoulder. This is the reality of where we are. We are both in overshoot on the majority of the planet's boundaries, and we are falling short on life's essentials for hundreds of millions of people around the world. If we are to look at this as a selfie, I think it would be accurate. This is our collective selfie as humanity. It makes me feel unsafe to look at this image, to see that red. That is the red that we have created. That is the overshoot. That is us pushing the planet beyond its carrying capacity. And that is us falling short on the essentials of life in the design that we have created for our economy and the components of that economy. So this is telling us that we are all in a period of transition. We all need to think about how we redesign our businesses, our financial structures, our economies overall. And there is hope. There is hope that we can get out of this red and into the donuts.
if you look at a future, we can flip it on its head and say, well, what do we get if we don't try to stay within that donut boundary? And we're already seeing it. We are already seeing the impact of all of that red on the second example. We are seeing climate breakdown. We are seeing huge disparities between people who have far too much money and really not enough to survive. We can see that capitalism, as it's been going through its evolution and striving for profit above all else, is unraveling everything, and the fabric of society, it feels like, is unraveling. And we can all feel this, right? You know, there are people who want to swim in rivers and they're polluted, and just fundamentals like clean water, the right to be able to swim in water that is by your home, all of these things which in that model, in the inner circle, would be prioritized and safeguarded for people. We can see that breaking down. We can feel this happening around us. So I think that the future, when we're looking at an economy which is not profit above all else, which is not shareholder dividends before all else, could solve so many other problems. And it builds social cohesion as well. Gardening projects, increasing biodiversity, enabling people to grow food locally, getting to know each other, talking about how they can solve problems in their local community. These are the ripple effects that we see. And that's what the donut model would bring us.
For me, what excites me is that those businesses, entrepreneurs, investors, community groups, policymakers that are daring to redesign and say, hey, this isn't, you know, shareholder capitalism isn't something that was just bestowed upon us as a natural law of nature. Like, people sat in a room and designed the corporation and said it's got a fiduciary duty to do X and Y, and it must maximize this, and its board looks like that, and its investment models are, you know, these are human inventions. We created them in the 20th century when we weren't really aware of the challenges that the donut portrays for us. We weren't really in a position of understanding of those planetary boundaries, the impacts of inequality on social cohesion, the importance of creating a fair and more just world. There was a different understanding and there was a different design, and we need to let go of those old designs and think, okay, we're now in a world where we need to completely redesign, redefine our economies. And how do we play a role as activists, as entrepreneurs, as employees, as voters and citizens, as any actor in this space, in redesigning the fundamentals of our economy, talking about it and making that the new normal?
We worked with Huddlecraft to develop something called the Money Movers program, which is a movement of primarily women, but people who've been marginalized from the financial sector broadly, but who are keen to take climate action with their personal finances, and creating a bespoke kind of 3-session journey to support women to come together to figure out what kind of future their money is building, and then actually to kind of make the changes with their personal finances over that period that can start to build and support the new economy that we all want to see. And I think, you know, what's so important here is that what we can see in all these examples is that we need the mechanisms that close the sort of intention to action gap. It's not enough to have the good ideas. You also need to know how you're going to, you also need to have the resource, the relationships and the support in place to turn good ideas and good intention into action. And because actually change is what happens. Change happens in a social context. Change happens through the power of relationships. And I think that's what we really need to harness in terms of building the new economy.
We have created an economy where life is in service to finance, where everything, all of the possibilities in our economy, whether it's sustainability initiatives, whether it's a transition, whatever it might be, whether it's human rights, it's only allowed if it is delivering maximum returns. And that is a huge straitjacket to put on an economy that is in urgent need of transition. So democratizing finance, and there are lots of ways we could talk about this. It could be impact first finance, it could be about social finance, it could be about finance in service of life. There are many terms we can put on it, but essentially what we need to figure out is how do we enable and unlock the things that aren't happening, whether it is access to renewable energy or access to affordable housing that is ecologically safe in its production, or it's, you know, food and agriculture that is replenishing the soil, that is working in a way that isn't degrading the local ecology, and that is providing fair incomes and a sense of connection to the local community, workers, farmers. All of these transitions, for them to be unlocked, we need certain kinds of finance. And what I'm noticing, and what I've always commended Ethex on this, is its starting point isn't, you know, how can you fit the demands and parameters of finance? It's you're the social entrepreneur or social enterprise or community-owned enterprise. You're driving a solution we need. How do we fit into your needs? How do we redesign finance? The instruments of finance. How do we open up that term sheet if it's equity? How do we design a debt instrument? How do we, you know, define the relationship between financial expectations and the way the business evolves? Because otherwise, what we are noticing, and I've now worked with over 700 business leaders in running workshops with them, driving, you know, the biggest ideas, putting them on the table, transitioning away from fast fashion, transitioning towards, you know, ethical production that is ecologically safe across all sectors. And time again, the thing that is holding them back is finance, is them saying, look, I can't do this because it delivers returns, but it's not quite high enough. It has a margin, but the risk is a bit high. And finance won't budge. My investors won't budge. My financiers won't budge. I'm going to have to find solutions that meet their needs. Otherwise, I can't do any of this stuff. And that limitation, I think, gets broken when we're willing to redesign finance to be in service of what the economy actually needs.
So together with Patagonia, we created a company called United Repair Center, which creates clothing repair at large scale for fashion brands, for clothing brands. And we do this in order to A, facilitate the process for brands in large scale to provide repairs, but B, and perhaps more important to this, create jobs for people that distance to the labor market.
Requiring those big investors to think very differently about risk. So within the financial sector, we have quite a narrow, people have quite a narrow understanding of what risk is. It tends to be understood in the sense of, you know, your investment is at risk if, but not actually our planet is at risk if, you know, our future is at risk if. And I often come back to what the great Indian environmentalist Vandana Shiva said many times, which is it's not an investment if it's destroying the planet. And if we can build that kind of understanding into our financial sector through a gradual process of regulatory reform, then actually I think that would make a big difference to unlocking the kind of capital that people like Thami need to see, you know, their business really grow and thrive. And I'm going to come back to this point about relationships and community and what it is that we need to invest in order to you know, why we need that return in our older age in the future. And we need that return, understandably, to provide for, you know, ourselves, our families, our loved ones, our dependents in very, very difficult times. But, you know, there are other ways in which having the private financial means to do that is not the only way in which we secure a kind of a safe and livable and thriving future for our, you know, our loved ones. And, you know, in the future, we also need public services that operate well. We need strong connections in our neighborhoods. We need networks of connection and interdependence, and thinking about how do we invest in the kind of systems that give us those kinds of returns that actually might be just as well placed, you know, or need to be held in balance with that personal financial security, in order to secure, you know, livable futures for our loved ones, which is an entirely understandable drive, but perhaps personal finance isn't the only route to that.
I really believe that we are sitting in a very special moment in our history. We are the last generation that still have the opportunity to make change. And we see this happening in a grassroots level, but we also see a combination on legislation and finance taking heads towards change. And I think it's upon us to take the step and make it tangible and make it practical and make it in transition, as we mentioned, using the system to change the system, because there's only time to act, which is today.